Welcome to the Equinety Podcast, where horse owners just like you share their incredible Equinety stories and how Equinety is changing their horses' lives. Whether you're searching for something to give your performance horse better focus, faster recovery, and more stamina, or in the extreme case where all hope seems lost, give your horse what it needs to help heal at a cellular level, you'll find it here. So jump in on today's episode to hear how Equinety is helping horses worldwide. Now, welcome your host, John Dowdy.
Hello and welcome to another Equinety Podcast. This week we're going to swing down into Anthony, Florida, and we're going to be talking about quite a few critters this week. We've got, about 8 horses and a Dalmatian, and we're going to talk about how Equinety has impacted the lives of these horses and dog. And without further ado, Ramona, Petrillo, welcome to the Equinety Podcast.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm so excited to talk about Equinety and what it's done for all my animals. That's
great. Well, we're glad to have you. And let's start off with a little bit of your background. How did you, let's just go all the way back to the beginning. Your initial studies, and you're a nurse now, so you understand the science and the things, but you've been around horses for many, many years. But let's go back to your initial studies.
Okay, so I rode as a child, pretty much just backyard 4-H stuff, and I always wanted to be a vet. So I first went to college to get my degree in animal science with a concentration in pre-veterinary medicine. I graduated with my bachelor's, and I chose, instead of going into veterinary school, I had a great opportunity to do some riding and teaching, and I chose that route, just mainly because I wanted the opportunity to ride and teach, and didn't think I could pass that down, thinking that school would always be there. And then I dabbled in the teaching, didn't make as much of an impact as I wanted to on my career, and wanted to focus more on my horses, and I decided to go back to school for nursing, and I am now an ER nurse.
So you see lots of activity being an ER nurse.
Oh, I do see a lot of activity in the ER.
Yeah, no doubt. So in your spare time, you also are a MagnaWave practitioner.
Yes.
Yep, and then you also do eventing, dressage, and some jumping?
You got that right. I have 3 horses, and one's an eventer, and one does dressage now due to a previous injury, and the other is a show jumper.
That's great. Well, I want to get into talking about all 3 of these horses, maybe what they were dealing with prior to Equinety and then after you started using the product, but I think it'd be interesting to talk about MagnaWave and the benefits of MagnaWave, maybe why you picked up on doing that and how that really helps in the body. Maybe just do a little education on the benefits of MagnaWave in general. Maybe why people should look into that.
MagnaWave is the brand of a pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. Can I say that again?
Sure.
MagnaWave is a brand of pulse electromagnetic field therapy. So I have a machine, and I go out to clients' farms and work on their horses, and them as well if they request it. And what it does, it helps heal at the cellular level, much like Equinety. I've been involved with MagnaWave for going on 3 years now, and a little bit over 3 years. And so going down to the cellular level, each cell has an electromagnetic charge. Inside the cell, it's a negative charge. The extracellular fluid outside of the cell is a positive charge. And it's that negative, positive charges that allow for nutrients to flow into the cell, nutrients, oxygen, and then toxins and waste to exit the cell. And when a cell becomes injured, sick, damaged, diseased, whatever, stressed from daily training, the cell tries to heal itself, but it loses its negative charge. So it becomes more positive on the inside, which means that it can't get the nutrients and oxygen that it needs, and neither can it expel the waste and toxins that have built up inside of it. And then eventually the cell dies. So each pulse of the MagnaWave coils sends an electromagnetic charge through the body where the cells that need it, pick it up, are able to recharge themselves and get back to healing. And it also recruits stem cells to come up and become a tissue, such as if you tore a ligament or tendon, they'll call it up and help repair and build down new ligament tissue to repair itself. It increases circulation, increases oxygenation, detoxifies, helps remove toxins and waste from the body, and all that at the cellular level.
That's incredible. And, when we're talking about the Equinety product, which is 100% pure amino acids, and these amino acids, they're specifically formulated or put together in this stack to stimulate the pituitary gland, which last week, if you tune in, we've got in almost an hour of a podcast talking about the real more in-depth around the science of amino acids and how it works at a cellular level. But essentially what it's doing is it stimulates the pituitary to release the necessary hormones, which then help repair and regenerate at a cellular level. So in combination with using the Equinety with a MagnaWave is very, very powerful. And maybe you could tell people that are tuning in, you've been doing the MagnaWave for quite a while. What have you experienced since adding the Equinety to the MagnaWave?
Well, since adding the Equinety to the MagnaWave, since the Equinety helps heal at the cellular level as well, which will make the horses feel better all over. And the MagnaWave, when I go out, each horse, before I do each horse, I go over their body on the lowest setting. And that's one of the fabulous things about the MagnaWave therapy is that you can detect where they're sore, reactive, tight, by, on the lowest setting, going across the body. And the areas that are tight or sore will react. They'll pulse a little bit more so than the areas that aren't. And not only on my own horses, but on all my clients' horses that have been using Equinety now, I've noticed that every time when I go out to MagnaWave them, I'm picking up less sore, less tight, less reactive areas, which just tells me that, and their training hasn't changed. In fact, because these horses are feeling fabulous, and a lot of them are gearing up for the big Jockey Club competition down here in November. So they're training harder, they're galloping more often, longer distances, faster speeds, jumping bigger jumps. They're feeling better in their bodies since adding the Equinety to the MagnaWave.
That's great. So anybody tuning in might be a nice combination for you to try. So it's we've heard nothing but great things about MagnaWave. So, and I think if memory serves me correctly, this might be the first podcast we've had to actually explain what the MagnaWave does. So I just think it's important and beneficial when you use the Equinety in combination with things. Now, in your business, you are primarily in, we'll say, the higher end type of performance barns. Would that be somewhat accurate?
Yes, I do a lot of upper-level event horses and dressage horses.
Yeah. So one of the things with the Equinety product, we found that, whether it be a rescue horse, pasture ornament, performance horse, or you get into these high-end performance horse barns where, a lot of them are getting the creme de la creme, the best of the feed, the care, and everything else, and then you add the Equinety and they're still seeing the benefits because, well, they need amino acids. So that's really great. Well, let's get right into talking about your three horses. We'll start off with the first one, which I believe is Daisy. And tell us a little bit about what was going on with Daisy prior to using the Equinety, and then what you've experienced since adding the Equinety to it. And actually, prior to that, how were you first introduced to Equinety? What were your thoughts when you first saw the product? Maybe tell us a little bit about that, and then get into Daisy.
Well, interestingly enough, I was introduced to Equinety by one of my MagnaWave clients. They use Equinety, and she had samples, and she gave me a sample tub to try on my eventer for the dressage phase, hoping that it would help, relax them and get our dressage scores better. They're dressage trainers, so that was their thought that, hey, try this on him. Maybe, he'll relax a little bit in the dressage arena. Well, I came home and decided, well, I have a good test subject to try this on. Daisy she is a chestnut, off-the-track, thoroughbred mare with 4 whorls on her forehead, so she's extra evil. She really is a sweetheart, but she is a very reactive, high-strung horse. She'd never just would settle down to work. It would always be at least 20, 30 minutes of riding out every buck, rear, spin, taking off before she would be able to come down and focus and get to work. And then you would just hope that you could just contain the explosiveness to get through whatever you were doing for the show. She used to be an eventer, but she did have a big injury to her right front leg 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago. And so now we just do straight dressage. But because of that injury, we didn't think that she would ever even be pasture sound. So the fact that she is able to be ridden for dressage is a blessing, thanks to Magna Wave to repair that leg. So because of her injury, she would, and now that, she's exceeded our expectations about being pasture sound and I'm able to ride her for dressage, she would need to be on anti-inflammatory. So she was on Previcox long term, which then in turn, even though it's gentler on the stomach, it did, cause her some belly issues. And I wanted to try it on her, the Equinety, and see if that made a difference. Because like I said, she was always reactive. So 4 days of trying that and not, I was like, well, I've tried everything with this mare. I doubt this is going to make a difference, but I was given it. Let's just go with it. And after 4 days, this went from a horse that hated to be brushed or touched and would try to kick out or nip you to one that loved being curried. I mean, the harder you curried her now, the better she felt, and she was loving it. So you could touch her. She was less reactive. Her muscles became softer. When you're brushing her, instead of tensing up and hollowing out her back, her muscles were soft. And I stopped having to give her anti-inflammatories, and she's been sounder.
And this happened in 4 days?
In 4 days. She stopped cribbing. She's a career cribber. She would crib in her stall. She would crib at the wash stall. And after 4 days, I'm hosing her off, and I'm noticing that we're standing there at the wash stall, which, is wood, and she's not cribbing on the wood.
Wow.
I'm thinking, And then it kind of all, started coming together. I'm like, she's been quieter to ride. She hasn't been explosive. She's not cribbing, and she loves being groomed. And she's just softer all over. And so I used the Equinety. It was a 15-day supply. And then I ran out, and I thought, I'm not going to go out and get it right away. I'm going to see what happens. And sure enough, 2 days of being off the Equinety, she hated being touched again. Her back got all tight. She started cribbing. And I ran out on my lunch break at work and got the Equinety and started her back up on it. And then literally within a week, she was back to being the soft, relaxed Daisy. And that's when I called you and told you what a wonderful thing I thought this was.
Right. Now, I think this would be a good point, too, to answer. I'll ask my own question. So why does a horse have that kind of a reaction from a complete demeanor change by adding the Equinety, and then you run out, and then they go back to the way that they were doing? Well, the reason why this is happening is because the hormones that are released have a 23.5-hour life cycle. And so typically, we've heard a lot of stories of people either one doing a test like you've just described, or they'll think, well, I'm just going to use the product to help heal my horse, and then once they're all sound, then I'll just stop using the product. But the challenge is once the hormones are released, they have a 23.5-hour life cycle, and then the hormone levels go back to the way that they were prior to using the Equinety. So this is why the horse typically will revert back to the way they were doing before the Equinety. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's why that typically happens. So now, I would guess to say that she has not been off her Equinety since?
No, and nobody is coming off of Equinety.
Okay, so how is she doing these days with performing?
She is doing fabulous. So things have been going so well. In August, I took her to a dressage show. She hadn't been off the farm in 2 years. Prior, I would have to always tie a red ribbon in her tail to kind of warn people that, not to come near us because she could be very explosive off the trailer. I mean, I would typically have to lunge her. And of course, I was running just a bit behind and got there with just enough time to tack up and warm up without being able to lunge. And I did not expect to have a successful go. And I knew that she would be just hot coming off the trailer, new surroundings, hasn't been off the farm in 2 years. Well, I pulled in, dropped down the ramp. She just stuck her head out, looked around, took a sigh, came off the ramp and started eating grass. There was no show going on of her athletic abilities.
Wow.
So I tacked her up and decided, well, let's just see what I got. And literally 15 minutes of warm-up, and we walked into the ring, and she was as calm and supple and focused as anything.
And you're probably thinking, okay, did I bring the right horse? Is this the...
Exactly. I did not know how to ride her in the arena because I've never had that horse in the arena. I mean, I had always been dealing with just trying to keep a lid on the pressure cooker. And here I had a horse that was so relaxed. I'm like, I feel like I need to kick, but do I?
Oh, wow. That's pretty awesome. That is pretty awesome. So since you then experienced the results with Equinety on Daisy, then you decided to try it on Dublin. So tell us about Dublin.
I did. Dublin he's a 16-year-old thoroughbred connoisseur at gelding. He is owned by a very dear friend of mine, and I graciously get the ride on him. And he's done upper level eventing, and we've always struggled together with our dressage. And he's always been a little bit funny about the dressage arena, wanting to look around. And since starting him on Equinety, it took a while. I didn't see the results as quickly as I did with Daisy, but I just felt that I needed to stick with it because I knew the results I had with Daisy, it wasn't just a one-shot thing. And I felt that just maybe his problems, and every horse is unique. I mean, just like people, sometimes you respond quickly to something and sometimes you have to stay with the program. I mean, anybody who tries to lose weight, just ask them, I mean, sometimes you have to stick with it a little bit longer. So I just stuck with the Equinety, and it really took about 2 months before I started seeing changes in him, where he became more focused in the arena. His top line is just blossoming. He's getting all new muscle, correct muscle through the top of his neck and over his back, which, because now that he has the proper amino acids, I mean, I feel like these, especially the upper level horses that exert a lot of energy, they need that extra amino acids that might not be found in their diets to help support that protein synthesis to build the muscle. Mm-hmm. So now that he has that, he's been able to build the proper muscling, which not only has helped with our dressage, but has helped with our jumping because his form and his shape over a fence is so much better.
Wow, and he's 16 now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But acting much younger.
Yes, he feels like he's 6.
So I think it's important to point out for those tuning in, so in your first horse, you noticed a significant difference in 4 days on this little sample tub. And, the little sample tub we have is 15 days, so a lot of purchase that just to see if it's palatable, which we're going to be talking about 9 animals here. Have you had any palatability issues?
No, and if I did have a palatability issue, it would be with either Daisy or Lola, especially Lola, since she didn't clean up her feed at all before starting her on Equinety.
Right, and we'll get into Lola next, but the thing that I think is important here, so with Daisy, you noticed a significant difference in 4 days, and when it came to Dublin, you didn't really start seeing a difference for about 60 days, but really the muscle tone and things and the filling out, the really filling out with the muscle didn't happen for about 4 months. So you already threw a whole tub. And, we've heard every now and then people say, oh, I went through a whole tub and I didn't see anything, and then they just stopped. So what would be your feedback or recommendation for somebody that's experiencing a similar scenario?
I would recommend giving it a good 6 months. I mean, I had results at 4 months, but I think that, just like I mentioned earlier, everybody responds just a little bit differently. And I think if they just stuck with it for at least 4 to 6 months, they would not be disappointed.
No, and I would say the vast majority, I'm thinking in the high 90 percentile, do see a difference within 30 days or less. It's very, very, very common. It's very uncommon to go beyond 30 days, but there are those scenarios. So I would agree with you. Stick with it. I mean, they are amino acids. They are the building blocks of protein, and they have to work. I mean, there's no other use for them but to be the building blocks protein. So, okay, so let's get into Lola, your third horse here. What was going on with her prior to Equinety, and then what happened?
So Lola is another off-the-track thoroughbred mare. She is not explosive like Daisy. In fact, she's the complete opposite, where she internalizes all of her stress, which, can cause upset bellies, decreased performance. And it got to the point where her and I were just having so many bad rides together, and her performance decreased so much. And it made it a little difficult to go out to shows and have her internalize all that stress and anxiety and not have her perform well. That I was busy enough with Dublin and Daisy that I just stopped riding her. I had other people give it a go and see if they could help us out and, train her and take her to shows. But the same thing, she was still internalizing all that stress from the atmosphere and the training that she would just not perform. And when I saw the results with Daisy and then started seeing the results with Dublin, I started her on the Equinety as well. And since she's been on the Equinety, she has been cleaning up her food, which she never used to. I mean, she'd always leave something in her bucket, and sometimes it would be like more than half of her ration, which she only gets 3 pounds 3 times a day. And she wouldn't clean up her hay. She would just, kind of hang out. And since starting her on the Equinety, she's been eating everything, and she's filled out. She's fat and shiny. But the best part about it is that I ended up started riding her again at the end of July, and not really having much hope for the two of us. And she's just been getting better and better. And in fact, like, the two of us have been going so well together that we're going back to the show ring.
That is awesome. And I'm sure she's happy about that. She's got getting her job back. Less stressed?
Yes, I think she is, yeah. Less stress, and she must be feeling better.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, for sure. So let's go to a little bit smaller animal. Tell us about your 10-year-old Dalmatian, what was going on with her, which, by the way, these are amino acids, and since the pituitary is roughly the same size in mammals, about the size of a pea, a dog would get the same dosage as a big draft horse. So tell us what was going on with your dog.
So Eli's my 10-year-old Dalmatian. Last year we got a puppy, and Eli thought he was a puppy and would play very rough and run around the house, jumping over the couch. We don't jump on the couch. We would jump over the couch.
He was watching your jumping horses.
He was. There were plenty of times I would look at him and be like, I wish I could put a saddle on this one.
Yeah.
And then after about 6 months of having the puppy around, he started slowing down. He would not walk on the wood floors. His hind end would give out. I mean, he just looked super uncomfortable. I started him on a, hip and bone joint supplement. And, he got a little bit better, but still didn't want to play. Was still very cautious about walking on the wood floors. Would literally walk, we have area rugs. So he would take a couple of steps, go from one area rug to the other, even if it meant the long way to getting out the door. And when I saw the difference in my horses, I decided to put Eli on Equinety. And here's another one that can be very finicky about his food. And since being on the Equinety, he's been on it about 3 weeks now. He is back to playing with the puppy, chasing him around the house. He's able to jump up on the bed and sleep with us, which, I prefer. And it's just great to see him happy and be able to run again as a 10-year-old.
Sure. That's awesome. So as you started seeing the results with, your personal horses and your dog, and so of course then you have clients that, although they're benefiting from MagnaWave but what adding the Equinety can do for them. So you started handing out strategically a few samples, and so we'll run through these real quick. We've got about 5 client horses. So let's go right into the first one, which is a level 4 eventer. So what was going on with this one, and then what'd you find by adding the Equinety?
So this horse, she did event up at the upper levels, and prior to becoming a client, she had some injuries, some unsoundness. It was just a little bit hard to keep sound without like a lot of injections and interventions, and which can get quite costly. Mm-hmm. And she was another tight in her back with the MagnaWave, could be very reactive. And so I suggested, I was like, well, look, I just got this product. I've tried it on Daisy. Her and Daisy are quite similar with like the tightness and the unsoundness. I'm like, give it a go. See what you think. I mean, this was getting to the point where her owner was contemplating just, having her as a pasture pet because she couldn't keep her sound enough to compete. And since she started her on the Equinety, she's just been sounder and sounder, and she's back in training, getting ready to show this winter season. She has another mare that was a little finicky, very finicky about her food. She would literally have to stand there. If she didn't stand there and hand feed her, the mare wouldn't eat. So she started her on Equinety, and now that mare is eating, gaining better weight, finishing up all of her food, which obviously frees up time if you don't have to hand feed your horse 3 meals a day.
Yeah, and the chickens were benefiting prior to this as well, I understand.
Yes, the chickens were. So now they're searching for other food. So they don't have the horses to eat.
Wow. So both of these horses were the first client. So now I think it would be beneficial at this point too. So now we've gone through 5 different horses and a dog, and they've all had different types of things going on with them. And outside of everything that you are currently doing for them, all you did extra was just add the Equinety, and it's affected them all in very positive ways, but all very differently because they all had different needs. So this is one of the great...
Right, yes.
Yeah. So this is one of the great things with the Equinety product, because we're actually giving the horse what it needs to release its own hormones, and then the body's deciding where to send those hormones for the healing. So it's customizing to each horse, which is pretty awesome, I would say. Okay. So,
yes, I am.
No, you go ahead.
I'm absolutely amazed at what I am finding with not only my own horses, but my clients' horses as well. Because I go out there and MagnaWave, and most everybody is on a weekly schedule, if not an every other week schedule. And I'm finding with the horses that have been receiving the Equinety that every time I go out, they're just getting better and better through their bodies. Softer, less reactive. And the only thing that's changed is the Equinety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Being added to their program.
Right. Okay, so the next one here is an off-the-track gelding by the name of Cole, who I understand had a lot of tension at shows, but also, although this wouldn't be effective or a cause of the shows, just had poor hooves. So tell us a little bit about Cole.
Yeah, so Cole's another off-the-track thoroughbred. He was always very tense at shows, tense in the dressage arena, spooky with jumping, and, just being an off-the-track thoroughbred, or just a thoroughbred. He had his typical little thoroughbred feet that would fall apart pretty easily. So he's another client of the MagnaWave, and I suggested, hey, why don't you try this for Cole, see if it helps him. Like, it's, to help Daisy with her tension. And so she tried him on it, and sure enough, he's gotten more relaxed. She's been getting the best dressage scores that she's had on him. He's gotten rounder, and his feet haven't been falling apart. He's actually been able to hold onto shoes, and his feet have been looking great. And she started back in, I would say, July. So it's been a good 3 months.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and the hoof quality is probably one of the most common things that we hear as well, among all the other things. But yeah, we've been receiving a lot of feedback and pictures, before and after pictures with the hooves. So that's great, which actually leads us right into the next one, which also had some hoof issues and also challenges gaining weight. So tell us about this one.
Yeah, another off-the-track thoroughbred. We eventers love our off-the-track thoroughbreds. Nothing better than galloping a thoroughbred around that cross-country course.
Right.
So she got him off the track, and, they're fit athletes. And, they do require a little downtime, and, getting used to their program, a new program, new environment. And so he came in quite thin with thin shelly hooves, and she started him on it when she saw my Facebook post. She messaged me. She's up in Michigan, and she asked me about my experiences with the Equinety, and I promptly sent her a little sample package in the mail and said, try this. You have to try this. Like, this is the game changer. And sure enough, she went out after she ran through a sample pack and got some more, and he's been on it, and she says that he's just plumped right out, calm, like relaxed, easy to transition into, restarting his new career as an eventer. Feet are fabulous.
That's great. Now, again, customizing to the horse, and we get into, let me guess, another off-the-track thoroughbred, mare this time.
Yes, mare, yes.
So tell us about this super athletic but very tense, overreactive to new surroundings, and explosive, as you put it.
Yes, well, rogue is rogue, and that's the mare's name, so she lives up to it. She is super talented, and her owner is such a young, talented rider that has just not given up on her. She was quite the handful when she came down and, started in the program, and I started MagnaWaving her in hopes of relaxing her back muscles. Super tense, tight horse. She has a little bit of stifle issues as well, which doesn't help the whole back tightness and soreness. So, being a regular MagnaWave client, I introduced her to the Equinety as well, and she has just turned, like that. Just the same, very similar results to Daisy. Mm-hmm. Just immediately relaxing and becoming softer through her body, more tolerant of being groomed, relaxed at shows, not as explosive. And so now her owner loves riding her.
Yeah,
and they're able to. And the best part about it is, like, as they relax through their body and have the proper muscling able to develop and support whatever needed extra support through their system, whether it is their belly, are they having like some gastric issues that you can't pinpoint, or some soreness somewhere, or just relaxation in the mind. Once all of that starts to happen, then you're able to train and accomplish steps and goals, because then you have a willing partner.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody feels better, and the rider, as a rider, you're happier and more relaxed yourself, which translates down into the horse. So, you know what? We've heard of a lot of people dealing with mystery lameness issues, and I think, if you're tuning in, listening to this, and you're dealing with some sort of a mystery lameness, you've tried all kinds of different things, and nothing really seems to be pinpointing what the real issue is. Give the Equinety a try, because again, we're giving the body what it needs to release hormones, and then the body is sending those hormones with pinpoint accuracy. The body knows where it needs to be healed. And so this is the great thing about this product. Now we go into, and I just noticed, I don't think I missed this one when I was saying, hey, we had 9, but I think we've got one more horse here that was dealing with a lot of tension in the ring. Tell us about this mare.
Yes, so she was an open jumper. She came from another program, and they overfaced her. She's, when she was quite young, because she had such an athletic jump, they just kept on going higher and higher. And, she didn't have the proper muscling training, at that stage of her training to support the bigger jumps, mentally or physically. She just wasn't prepared to be jumping that high over and over and over, especially in a show environment. Unfortunately, sometimes when you have a trier, in the wrong hands, that's what happens. Mm-hmm. That, they just keep on raising the jumps, and you go a little too fast, too quick. And, it was too much for her mind. And she ended up having a lot of, anxiety and issues, training issues, confidence issues, because, when they're young like that, and if you ask too much too soon and they scare themselves, well, that could just totally ruin the horse. So then my client ended up, getting her for a really cheap price because the mare would not jump, and slowly started, just breaking it all down, starting from the basics again. And she had been competing in the open jumpers with my client, but she just always felt that she was anxious, like a little, she could still feel a little bit of that tension. And she didn't want to, push her, and she did let her have her time, but she just felt like she just needed that a little extra help to relax in the arena and in the training so that she could progress. And so started her on Equinety, and she has become more focused and less anxious about her training, which then translates into better performances in the show ring.
That is great. Well, so there we have it. We've got quite a plethora of examples here of how Equinety can help, and in combination with a MagnaWave has found to work really, really well. Well, Ramona, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I know you're very busy with nursing and writing and MagnaWaving, and where do you have all the time?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, awesome. Well, Ramona Petrillo from Anthony, Florida, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Equinety Podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, John, and thanks for such an amazing product.
Well, you're very welcome. We're blessed. I'm not the mastermind behind it, but hey, I'm helping to get it out there. So we appreciate you supporting us, and again, sharing your Equinety stories. So thanks again.
Thank you.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's all for this episode of the Equinety Podcast. For more information on purchasing Equinety, be sure to visit our website at teamequinety.com, where you'll also find product information as well as more testimonials on how others have seen amazing results by implementing Equinety into their horse's supplement regime. We'll have more stories on how Equinety is helping horses worldwide right here on a future episode of the Equinety Podcast.